Welcome, my friends, to Assembly V1.1. I'm Joel Zaritsky, National President of the Society of American Magicians. It's great to see so many magicians joining us tonight in the Zoom room, and we have magicians and guests from all over the world connecting with us on YouTube. You're the reason that we've been able to provide wonderful programs such as tonight. And for those who aren't yet a member, I personally want to extend an invitation to join our family, the oldest magic society in the world. We have so many benefits, including monthly lectures, training sessions, an amazing magazine, a convention that's off the charts, assemblies throughout the world, and so much more. So come, take us for a test drive. You can do a trial membership to see if you love it, and I know you will. If you're between the ages of 7 and 17, we have the Society of Young Magicians. And for those of you who aren't magicians, but just love watching magic shows, supporting the art of magic, we have the Friends of Magic with newsletters, shows, perks, and live events. It's all part of the wonderful world of the Society of American Magicians. You are the energy that makes up the SAM. And you can find it all right here at magicsam.com. Remember, stick around after tonight's episode, because as every episode, we have the schmooze and the mingle. So stick around. But right now, I want to turn it over to the president of V1.1, Matthew Crabtree.
Thank you, Joel. Over the last year, we have been working on spotlighting different groups inside the world of magic. We started back in November with the youth with the SYM. And then January, Connie Boyd had a great panel of the women of magic. And tonight, once again, we are turning our spotlight to a group of magicians. Tonight, we're hosting Inside the Black Magician's Diary, and I'd like to bring on our host for the evening, past National President of the Society of American Magicians, Ice McDonald.
Well, welcome. Thank you very much. We are welcome to be here. We're glad to be here. I wanted to thank Joel and Matthews for putting this together. They approached me about putting this panel together, and I've selected 7 individuals who I think is super special. Tonight, we're going to do a panel discussion. I brought in Kevin Bethea, I brought in Randy Shine, we have Eric Redmond, we have his father, Dwight Redmond. We also have Puck, we have Roy Rennick, and we also expecting a few more guests to come in. So this event is pretty much like anything you wanted to ever know about Black magicians, but was afraid to ask. It comes down to actually anything you wanted to know, period. So this is your opportunity. There is no question that's off limit. This is something I want to tell. Since we're going to be doing this question and answer, and you have all the different personalities here, understand that each person owns its own answer. All these personalities can't be lumped together. So my answer will not be Rory's answer. My answer won't be Malcolm Puck Ring, which is Puck. And so that's how we want to run this. And feel free to ask all questions. We appreciate it. Hopefully we will have some special guests later on to answer more questions. Again, this is Inside the Black Magician's Diary. And I would at this time would like to pass it on to my co-star, Randy Shine.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Randy Shine from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, better known as Philadelphia. Thank you for being here, and thank you for this, giving us this opportunity to talk about African-American magicians. I like to, before we really get into the meat of everything, there's a couple things that I want to reiterate that I said. Number one, African American magicians, African American people are diverse. So you're going to have diverse opinions. So it's not like if one person says it, they represents the entire group. Number two, I'm sure that there's going to be some tough questions and some tough answers. And with that being said, that I applaud you for coming on here and listening and asking some questions. And some things may make you uncomfortable, but that's good dialogue when we could have these conversations and we can learn from each other. So that is also very important. As a good friend of mine always says, if I'm bowling down your alley and knocking down some pins, well, you need to, we need to wrestle with that. And also for me personally, I was once told just 2 weeks ago that when I talk about issues, I come off as angry. And my response to that is, don't confuse my passion with anger. And number two is that policing people's reactions or response to things is not cool, because these are our experiences, and you cannot tell anyone how to respond on something that they experience in their lives. But with that said, it's going to be an enjoyable evening. We're going to have a great time. We're going to learn from each other. So I'm excited, and I'd like to pass it on to Rory Rennick.
Hi, good evening. I'm Rory Rennick, and I just wanted to express at the end of this session, at the end of this panel, I'm hopeful that every magician in the house would be inspired, that because of our unique situation, particularly in this country, our unique standing gives us some unique perspectives. And if we can become successful in what we have done in our lives, you can be as successful as well. So, with that said, let us start.
Let me restate a couple things. You will see in the chat room is where we're receiving questions. Also, welcome YouTube. This is open to the public, and we appreciate your coming as well. You also have the opportunity in real time to ask these questions. We have very capable engineers. We have our hosts, Matthew and Joel, will be feeding those questions to us, but you can ask anything you want in the chat, and they will then throw them out to us. So without further ado, Matthew, let's get this ball rolling.
Like I said, any questions you have, go ahead and put them in the chat. So far, we have nothing coming in from YouTube, but Ron in the YouTube wanted to say hi to Puck and everyone.
Hello.
So let's start with a question from
Puck,
Cody.
Only Puck?
Yeah, only Puck said hi, Puck, hi, Puck, and everyone. But Puck's the only one who got called out by name. So Cody Clark wants to know, what's the best thing local assemblies can do to be as welcoming as possible to African American magicians?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, here what I think can happen. People have to feel that they belong. Have these assemblies done anything to reach out to people of color? I think one of the things I'm working with on another group is there anyone that's reaching out and making them feel welcome? Hey, come on over here. We got something special. Even in your advertisement, you may not have someone that's of color in your group, but go out and do some magic for some groups and say, hey, this is what we got going. The percentage is very different when it comes to people of color and Caucasian, the white magicians. So we understand there's not an equal amount of folks that covers all cultures and genres. But I think if you make people feel that there is a place that you can go and that you're welcome, I think that would happen. That would be good. Anyone else want to talk about that?
Yeah, in I'm in Ring 50 in Washington, D.C., which is a predominantly Black area. And there's maybe 5 Black magicians in the whole group. I got into it late, and the only reason I got into it was because of Eric. And I think my problem was I was never exposed to magic. You know, I didn't know anything about magic except every now and then on television. So what I try to do is I expose more Black people to magic in an effort to, you know, make it more interesting to them and make them want to come join the club. So I think we just have to expose magic more to our community because our people don't see magic.
Mm-hmm.
I know I never did growing up. You look, when I got into magic, I was 45, 46. I didn't even know who Doug Henning was.
You see, what happens a lot of times as young boys and girls, the white parents usually take their kids to the opera, to open live theater. African Americans just recently started going to live theaters and seeing live shows. So now we're kind of getting into where we love the live art. We were going to the movies, and for as many reasons, there's a whole lot of reasons why that didn't happen. But I was talking to a friend of mine, and he actually was taking his 3-year-old kid to an Italian opera. So learning to appreciate live theater at an early age has a lot to do with it too, in regards to exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why Eric got into magic, because I used to take him to see Copperfield whenever he would come to DC.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what sparked Eric's interest in magic.
The exposure.
Mm-hmm. Can I jump in on this?
Yes.
Okay. Much like a lot of things, this is systemic, and we're talking in the magic community, and the magic community is a microcosm of what's going on nationally and what has in the past and present, and hopefully not the future, what's going on. And so exposure is one of the things, and it's one of those things where African Americans are not exposed to magic, but also there's some things that culturally are different. And I'm sure Rory could talk more about this in terms of religious belief and other cultural norms or that African Americans are not exposed or interested in magic. That's one thing. I didn't get interested in magic until I was in graduate school when I saw the cover of Genie magazine with Hiawatha on it. And I was like, wow. And there's an old saying that says, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so to try to attempt to answer Cody's question, what can the assemblies do? Also, what can we as African Americans do? We have to be out there given a platform in order for people that look like us can see us and can be us. So that's important on our end. I do know that for a fact, I do know this, and I've had several conversations with Arlen Solomon, and he's involved with the SYM. We've been talking for years on what we can do in the Philadelphia surrounding areas. And I know he's been working hard on that. And I know I've been doing what I can do. And with that, you know, there's some barriers in terms of time commitment and things of that nature. But it is important for all of us, the assemblies and people, African-American magicians, to do what they can in any small way to encourage and to be out there for the new generation of African-American magicians. Now, I will say this, and I'll probably talk about this later on, that there is a community of African-American magicians that are doing some incredible things.
Yes, we're going to talk about
And
that.
how do we tap into that? And I'm gonna tell you where that community is,
Yes.
where most of the young community is, Instagram. And I've been able to interact and connect with several young African-American magicians, young magicians in general on Instagram who are doing some things. So another thing is, how can we use this new technology to reach those individuals, particularly African-American magicians?
Right. So next question, please.
Mhm.
So this one it's more towards ICE, but if others would like to jump in on as well. ICE, this is from Lee. He understands that you're elected to the Diversity and Inclusion Committee at the Magic Castle. What are some of your goals that you hope to accomplish with that committee?
Wow, that's a very good question. I am actually the chairman of that committee. It's a newly formed committee. We've had some issues, and everyone pretty much know about in the magic world the issues that we're facing. And so I was asked to be a part of a committee as well as chair this committee. And the AMA, the Academy of Magical Arts, is striving to be more inclusive and more diverse. So we are an advisory committee making assessments on different changes that can happen at the Magic Castle with the members, the guests, as well as the staff. So we have already submitted some wonderful recommendations to the board of directors, which has been approved. So you will see some changes very soon. As chairman, as an advisory committee, I am to advise the board, and they will then pass down the wonderful news to the membership. So I won't be the bearer of that good news, but there is some good news. But yes, the whole diversity and inclusion thing is global now, and the Academy of Magical Arts is joining in on everybody else to bring in all cultures, all genders, everything, so everyone will feel welcome when they visit the Academy of Magical Arts.
And this is one for the Redmonds. When did you discover magic in DC?
So I discovered Al's Magic Shop back in the mid early 90s. And that was my first real magic shop. And then we found Barry's after that, Barry's Magic Shop. And then we ended up finding Ring 50. So 96, 97, I guess.
96, I think.
Yeah, 96, 97 is when we kind of made our splash and started getting into the community. And then I think our first real lecture was Bob Bingle's lecture. And A Day with Bob Bingle. And that was the driving force behind everything. And we started learning and practicing from there. It's crazy how you remember those things.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't get into magic until Eric was 14 or 15 years old. He started doing magic when he was 6 or 7. And I was just being the good daddy, dragging behind him, taking him to club meetings and buying props, setting up the shows, talking to my customers and getting kiddie parties for him to do. And so one day he gave me a trick, a number 2 pencil. He said, "Why don't you learn this trick?" And I had to learn the paddle move. So that was the first magical move I learned. And from that point on, I was hooked.
I think when we're talking about inclusion in magic, I think a lot of times some of the interest in magic always starts on a grand scale. Like you see an illusionist, or you see the Tigers like Siegfried and Roy when they were doing the act, and that's the hook. And a lot of times magicians, when they're young, don't understand that it starts for you with card tricks or something tangible and small in your hands, and you have to work your way up. I think having a good support system, my dad was able to really show me
Where you going?
And tell me early on
Okay.
by reading these books and things, how things were going. So.
Okay, go ahead, Roy.
There was a question that was overlooked by Paul Critelli.
Well, Paul Critelli will give us the questions in the order we got, but that question was for Eric. So he will get.
I'm back.
Don't worry about the questions that you see. Matthew is seeing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm bouncing back and forth between the
Yes.
YouTube questions and
Yes.
the room questions. But yeah, let's go ahead and move to Paul's question.
Now mics are on.
I know now.
Yes, and if you hear a barking dog, yeah,
Okay.
mics are on. But as I do the posting for the SAM Facebook page, and when I post, I don't post, female magician, black magician. It's just magician. So Paul wants to know, when do you feel there will never be a need to have an adjective in front of magician? You'll just be identified as a magician instead of being a black magician or however the adjective is. When do you feel that will happen, or do you think we're past that point now that we need to make that inclusion?
Okay, Pop, I know everybody has something. You have an answer to this one or no?
I mean,
After that, Kevin.
I'm not really sure. I mean, because there's so many different styles of magic. I mean, if you use your blackness or your culture in your magic, then I think by all means you should be, the black magician, like the way Frank Brent was America's black magician. But if you're just a standard practitioner, I mean, yeah, eventually, it would be nice to just be known as a magician and not as a black magician. But I guess now it's a novelty because of the fact that there's so few of us on that level of a Copperfield or a Chris Angel or so forth and so on. So until they see more of us at that level, I guess they will think of us as, the black magician.
Kevin.
Yeah, I kind of to piggyback off of what Puck said. I think we all look at ourselves as just magicians. I mean, that happen to be black. I mean, that's something that you'll never ever be able to avoid. I mean, it's the fact that when they see you, they see that as well. Basically, because of what Puck said, is that there's not many of us up and in there doing it at that level. So we're going to naturally stand out like that. And unless you are using that as part of your marketing or advertising, you shouldn't really run into that situation that much. I mean, I do corporate shows all over the world. I do trade shows. I do a lot of different things, and never ever did I get the feeling that there's Kevin, the black magician at that trade show. I've always just felt welcome that I'm just a magician there. So I think it's something that, it's a fact of life. It's going to be in people's minds, whether it be negative or positive. But, as far as that being put in front, I don't think it'll be there. You look at magazines and things like that. I don't see that, preceding your name as the black magician. So again, this is just something that, is unavoidable because you see it. You are a novelty. We are novelties, and it's always going to be a part of us. But at the end of the day, we're just magicians. So that's the way I see it.
Randy.
Okay. It's like both Kevin and Puck said, it's a delicate balance. And I think when you say black magician, I think that comes more from the magic community. Oh, he's a black magician. He's a black magician. I've had the pleasure of working with all these gentlemen on this panel and some others. When we perform, we don't advertise or market ourselves as the black magician. However, I was born black before I became a magician. And so don't separate who I am and my life experience because of the color of my skin from being a magician. This is speaking within the magic community, because what I do, what Randy does, some of the things that I do in my show comes from the black experience. You may not know it, you may not recognize it, but it does. And so that's important to me. So yes, we are magicians, and please recognize that, but do not smudge out the fact that we have an experience based on the color of our skin. So do you have to say, oh, Puck the black magician, Rory the black magician, Kevin the black magician? No, you don't have to say that. We are magicians. And for the most part, I don't think that our clients really look at that. Not all of our clients, because I'm sure everyone has some stories. I do have some stories when I walked out on stage and said, hey, the black population increased by 100% when I came into this town, and everybody laughed at that because I talked about the elephant in the room, and they never seen a black magician before. So that's something that we have to deal with, and we have to juggle and navigate that. And I tend not to separate the two, but I don't promote myself as a Black magician.
Okay,
And I just want to end, I'm going to end this with one more thing. And it's quite evident because I know every African-American magician who's watching this, I bet you could count you could ask any of them, and more than 10 times, someone has approached them, whether they were white, Black, or other, came up to them and said, "You're the first Black magician I've ever seen before." and that speaks to what Kevin and Puck said, because it's an anomaly. We are novelty. And so, which speaks back to what Cody's question: what can we do to expose and cultivate other Black magicians, whether they're young or old?
Okay, so we're gonna let Roy take us home on this one.
Okay. Something is problematic, and like Randy, I'm a Black man that happens to be a magician. I don't market myself as such, but I don't check my politics or my race at the door when I come in. It's quite evident when I do come in, this is who I am. If you have a bias about that, it becomes evident to us as performers. We feel it, we sense it, we compartmentalize it, and most of the time we just move on. And it's until we have more people in your clubs and you have a show, when you're booking someone and you're trying to bring about this diversity, it would be great if you don't start thinking, well, we got the Black one there now, and stop. Why can it be 4 Black magicians and 1 white magician on your show? It just happens to be. So once we start addressing those types of realities, we will always be kind of stuck. And I got a sense that we're moving past that, though.
Right. Okay. So before we go to the next question, Eric and Dwight, you good, or you want to address that?
I think like all the other magicians say, you know, you don't see too many Black magicians, so it only comes up because they want to know how did you come by being a magician? Like, if you look at it on the flip side, it'd be like if no one knew who Eminem was and you went to a rap show and you saw Eminem for the first time, you're like, wow, how did you become so good at rapping? Your background wouldn't have suggested that this would have been your path. So that's kind of how I look at it with us. Normally, I've never booked myself as a Black magician. I'm just a magician who happens to be Black, like everyone says. Right. At the same time, I do work African-American functions, you know, African-American churches, different venues where that's the target market. They're looking for African-American performers. I do work those as well. So it's a balance. It's a balance there.
Kevin, you want to wrap?
Just real quick, and I think we'll all agree upon this. It's like anything. I mean, eventually, your personality and your performance will shine through. I mean, if you're doing an awesome show and things of that nature, they're going to forget what nationality and race you are. All they're going to remember is the magic and the experience that they had. You know, that Randy Shine came out and blew us away, or Ice McDonald. You know, where did he get those dubs? I mean, that's what they'll remember ultimately at the end. So I think keeping that in perspective like that, you know, that's one of the ways to kind of make that stigma go away. Just go out there and kick butt, man, do an awesome performance and have them love you. You know, you've all heard the saying, if they like you, they're going to love your magic. And all that other thing, the Black magician, that's all going to go away.
My goal when I'm on stage, you will recognize that I'm a Black man for maybe a minute. The curtain go up, you go, oh, Black man, nice purple jacket, in pretty dubs. And after that, the magic should take over at that point.
Exactly.
So,
agreed.
And so if you're concentrating on me being a Black man and I'm halfway down my act, I must really suck. You know?
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw this back to Matthew for the next question. Gentlemen, we have short time, so let's keep our answers kind of tight.
Yep.
We have one coming in from YouTube. Rodney wants to know, when you work for Black audiences, do you think, or do you do the Black audiences think magic is being something that's anti-Christian and part of the occult? And how do you get beyond those beliefs with when you're working for predominantly Black audiences?
Okay, I'm gonna take that one first and then I'll pass it on. I am a I am a son, a brother, and an uncle of ministers. And so in back in the day, the traditional thought process with the church is that there is something evil about magic. Magic and church is not synonymous to one another. But what I'm finding out is church folks love magic. They love magic. The more contemporary as this is coming, they love magic. I think the system of the traditionalist or the structure is the one that pits the magic against the Christianity. I've been a Christian before I was a magician. I was a Christian at 4 years old. I became my first magic kit came at 10, and so I'm a Christian that's happened to be a magician. You see what I'm saying? And I perform for all kinds of church. White, Black, Korean. I've been global, and all they want to be is entertained. And so I think now the contemporary attitude behind church and magic is the entertainment part of it. Now, some people can actually make it more evil. There are people that will take it dark. I know a guy, instead of performing with doves, he was performing with black birds and crows. And instead of producing candles, he was producing rats and bats. Now, I don't care if it's evil or not. You produce a bat, I'm on my way out the door. So, that gives a whole different connotation regarding the magic thing. That's the genre you decide to perform in. But as a whole, I think magic folks are starting to really like magic. And so with that, I'm gonna pass it on to who would like to address the next, Rory?
All right. I performed for a gospel group one time, and I had to soften that idea, because they had these ideas of performing for the devil. When I said, if I make a ball vanish in front of you, I said, I can show you how that's done. I could explain how that's done. I say, I don't think the devil has an interest in that. But there are people downtown in your neighborhoods making your neighborhoods disappear. Maybe that's the devil you might want to explore. And the fact is, historically, there were a number of Black magicians who performed almost exclusively for churches. Mm-hmm. And so something was kind of missing between the 20s into the 70s. But we're reclaiming that as well.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story about that. I was an insurance salesman, and I had a African preacher came into my office one day, and he looked on my wall and he saw some posters and pictures. So he said, "We're on opposite sides." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, I'm a preacher and you're a magician." I said, "No." I said, "I'm an entertainer and you deal with people's souls." I said, "What you do requires faith." I said, "What I do, I can show you." I said, "Anything I do, I can show you how it works." I said, "But what you require is faith." I said, "So we are totally different." So then he said, well, he looked around and he said, "Well, where'd you get all them powers from?" I said, "Man, if I had powers, you think I'd be sitting here selling you car insurance?"
Truth be told, I come from the same stock as Ice. My father is a pastor, and whole family and all that. But truth be told, I mean, if you look at some of these mega pastors on TV, they're doing some magic tricks and just conning people in the first place. So,
Preach.
So I'll just leave it like that.
Next question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, when you think about, remember we did the show in Philly, we did the Heart and Soul. Remember the first one, Randy? I did the ladder levitation. I remember a girl came to me afterwards and swore I had supernatural powers. And that was the first time I'd experienced, working for an all Black audience. And since that time, anytime I work for a Black audience, their reactions are way bigger and a lot more genuine than when I work for a white crowd, because of the might be past with religion, or the fact they've never seen magicians on a regular basis. They don't know that it's like they didn't watch Mark Wilson's show when they were, you know, younger and stuff. So they didn't know that it's just trickery. They think that it could be actually real. So I mean, the reactions are completely different. And they're magicians. There was who's my man, guy from DC, went out and started a church, conning people out of their money using magic. You know, it's like same thing with John Riggs. John Riggs did the same thing with the Messiah process. I mean, using magic to get women, you know, to give them money and cars and things of that nature. So I mean, magic's always been used that way for people who want to take advantage of other people. So that's why the Black community, because they're not exposed to it on an entertainment level, when they see it for the first time, you know, the one who tapped into that the best was David Blaine. He went and got them to turn the camera on the audience. And when you see these urban kids seeing magic for the first time, they're like, they think it's real. They're running around like going crazy and stuff, because they don't take it as an entertainment. They take it as its actual real power. So, you know, there you go.
Kevin?
You know, I'll have a quick funny story to share with you that happened to me while I was in college. And to this day, I still freak out about it. I had a roommate who was from Nigeria at the time, and I started showing him a little bit of magic, a couple simple card tricks and things of that nature. And he looked at me very strange, but he seemed like he enjoyed the magic. So I took it as what it was. Well, later on that night, I'm sleeping in the bed, and as I'm laying down, I felt something on my back. And it was the strangest feeling. So I get up, I turn the light on, I get up, and I kid you not, in my bed were raw chicken feet and grains of rice that were spread out all in my bed. And I'm like going crazy. I'm like, what the heck is going on all these raw chicken feet? So I go to his name is Shaka. I said, you know, I went to him, Shaka, what is this? He goes, no, you do black magic or something like that. I go, what are you talking about, dude? So I even showed him the secret, which is what you were alluding to, Puck. I showed him the secret, and he still wouldn't believe me. He still thought that was, even after showing him the secret. Needless to say, I got a new roommate like a week later in college after that. But like Puck and some of these guys are saying, some religions really believe in the magical art. So you just gotta be careful with your audience. That's about it.
He called me Satan and took off running one time. I had to run after him and show him the trick. So Matthew, go ahead.
We're all aware of in-your-face racism, but is there any microaggression and microaggression racism that tells Black magicians, you're not welcome here, don't come back? Have you run into that?
Well, you know, I someone called me, they was like, I overheard him say, yeah, that's Ice. He's one of the good ones. And I was like, good ones? Good what? I knew exactly what he meant. Maybe I'm the tall one, really? No, but there's always have been a little microaggression when it comes to Black people as a whole, you know. But what's crazy is people act as if they don't know that they're doing it. Some people don't, but majority of people know that they're making these little snide remarks. I said one time to one person, I said, he was like, how could you, racism's over. And I was like, you don't even know what it looks like. I think you don't recognize it. You wouldn't know racism because you haven't had to deal with that. You know, there has not been a time when someone will walk up to you and say something very foul. I'm suited and booted. Walking down the street, and a lady's walking right towards me, and she grabs her purse and runs to the other side of the street. Now, I have a tie on, I have a business suit, and I have a briefcase in my hand. She grabs her purse, runs across the street where there's 3 white guys that look like hoodlums, and she's become more comfortable walking past that person, those people, than a well-educated, well-suited African-American. And so that's some of the things that is very disheartening, because as everybody who know me, I'm not going to steal your purse. I'm not built that way. But just those small things like that, we get on a daily basis. And I'm gonna stop and pass this on to everybody's looking at me. Who wants this?
I know I talk a lot, so I'm gonna
Go
wait.
ahead,
I'll
David,
give
go
it.
ahead.
I'll give it to somebody else.
Okay.
I'll go real quick.
Oh, Kevin.
I'm gonna give a couple really quick examples. I know we need to keep it moving. So I think the in your face thing for us performers, especially as African American performer, it's a feeling. It's a gut feeling you get. And I'll give you a couple examples. And there's also some false misconceptions as well that they don't realize what they're assuming, but it is. So one is when I may be doing strolling magic, and I approach a group, and this guy gave me this just nasty look, that disgusting look, and he walks away from the group. You know, I'm looking like, what did I do? And maybe thinking he doesn't like magic, but he didn't even know I was about to do magic. So for some reason, he didn't like my presence there. That's one example. Another example, which is great, is I'm doing strolling magic and I have a table, I'm walking around. They assume that I work there in the kitchen or something. So they put their plates and things up on my, their cups and glasses on my $300, corporate table or something, assuming that I work in the kitchen or something there. That's number two. And the third one, quick story, true, happened to me. I'm performing at the Tropicana in Atlantic City. I'm doing a stage show down there. And I realized I had left something in my car. I'm wearing a tuxedo, by the way. And I go up to the parking garage. I get the thing that I needed for the show. The elevator comes back down on the first floor, and the doors open up, and this very nice older white woman gets on. She hands me a $5 bill, and she says, "Third floor, please."
Wow.
True story. So, like I said, it's not blatant, but not realizing there's just some assumptions. It's a true story. But guess what? I took her $5. I took her up to the third floor. I came back down and did my show at the Tropicana. I told the audience the story, and they were cracking up. So those are my little 2 cents for you.
I'm thinking about ice.
I don't.
This is real quick. Real quick.
Yeah.
We were staying at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. You know the Plaza, and we were doing a documentary show. So they put us up at the Plaza, and Ice had his suit and tie on, and sure enough, they walked up to him and said, "Excuse me, sir, where's the restroom?" I started dying because I was like, "Why can't he be a guest?" I didn't get it, but anyway, it was pretty funny.
Right. But there's also microaggressions within the community. I remember being at a magic convention, and it was me, another African-American magician, Tavel Rose, and it was one other African-American magician. I can't remember off the top of my head. We were sitting together just talking, and someone came up to us and said, "You can join us." Now, that may not seem offensive. No, he said, "What are you guys doing by yourselves? You could come over here and join us." And I'm thinking, well, how come you cannot join us? Meaning that, so it's one of those things that, hey, this is our space, and we're giving you permission to come and join us. Now, it's the tone that's also, because sometimes you can say things and the tonality of your voice communicates one thing. And if you say it another way, it communicates something else. For example, no, 2 different things. And the tone of that person's voice was like, okay, we know you're different and everything. Hey, you don't have to stay there. We're giving you permission to join us. Years ago, and some of you may know this story, I was not there, but it was a magic convention. And basically there was an African-American magician on stage, and they ended up putting like a Klan hat on him or something like that, which was not cool, And it was supposed to be funny as a joke. That is not cool. That is basically, yeah, it's just not cool. I don't even think I have the words in the English language to describe how angry I was when I heard that. And I never attended that convention. And to this day, I refuse to go to that convention because I believe in public offense, public apology. There needs to be a public apology for that offense.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Rory.
Real quickly, sometimes you can get the microaggressions, and sometimes it's not the group. It could be just an individual. I remember performing for a regional chapter of the square dancing Association. It's National Square Dancing. I've never square danced in my life on purpose. But I met one person within the group, and sometimes we as performers, we can also misread the room and think that everyone's thinking that because we see one person acting that way, which ended up being like one of the funnest times I've had as a performer, and they loved it as well. So that's one of the things that we have to always balance in our minds as well.
Okay, Matthew, are you there?
Yeah. So let's the same question from this the same gentleman, Donald. His next question rolls right into some of the things that Randy touched on was national convention and conventions in general. How can those be more inclusive based on like Randy's story?
Whew. Okay, Dwight. I mean, Eric.
So I would say from the conventions that I've been through, just trying to have more diverse performers would be the very first step. I'm not saying that, you need to have someone perform just because of their race or anything like that. But if you have magicians that perform every year at a particular convention, I mean, there's some conventions where some of the same magicians are performing every year at these conventions. Well, then have someone else maybe take a spot for them, or have a show that is set aside for a diversity show where you have not just Black magicians, but Hispanic magicians, women magicians, all types of things. So I think that'd be the first step with conventions, is just trying to have more inclusion with the performers.
Anyone else?
I'll wait.
That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, I'll wait. Does anyone else want to address that?
Just to reiterate, like I said before, stop looking for maybe just the one. If it happens that the dates are available to have 2 or 3, no one's going to say it's a Black show. And if you do think it's a Black show because of that, then there's a problem in our thinking. So
yeah, I mean, on the other side of the coin, I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but there are not a lot. When you think about it, there's a lot of Black magicians, but how many of the Black magicians that actually work or have shows that are, that work at magic conventions? Magic conventions are not like working for the public. It's completely different. A convention act might do great at the convention, but bomb for the real world. You know what I mean? So a lot of these acts that they book at these conventions are novelty, magic acts. That's the reason why the juggler does so great at the magic convention. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where, there's not a lot of people that can work those spots. So I mean, like, I've worked a lot of magic conventions, so I can't say that it's ever hurt me being Black working conventions. I worked Abbas 4 times.
Yeah, me too.
So I mean, it's like I've worked, all the conventions, SAM, all these conventions and stuff. So I mean, it's never hurt me, but at the same time, you see the same Black magician all the time because we were the ones that were the novelty acts. Like I was the bird act, what I mean? Ice was the bird act. So we were novelty acts, to a certain extent. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I just didn't think that there were that many magicians that had convention acts.
I've done. I come right. I'm gonna save you for last. My Randy. My take on it. I've done almost every convention. I've performed, and I've had the opportunity to perform where there was 2 or 3 African Americans there performing with me, and I've also performed where I was the only Blackface in the area. Someone made a microaggressive statement one time when I walked into the convention. He said, "Oh man, I thought the only Black thing around here was the skunks and the bears." And so I was like, okay, I'm here on professional business. I have no time to address that at this moment. But it's like Puck said, it's the producer has a job to put a convention act together. And I deal with a lot of them. So I think I've seen people kill on the outside and come to the convention and suck. And the reason being is everyone is performing for magicians. It's magicians are a different crowd. Magicians are coming there not to be fooled by the effect, but appreciate the presentation of that effect most of the time, because a lot of them know how it's done through lectures and things. They appreciate the presentation. So a lot of times when we're performing at conventions, we have to be on our game. They're looking at every little slight and everything, because it's either a magic show or it's either an education. But as Eric said, it does not hurt to bring in more Black people if you want to draw more Black people conventions.
Right. Puck is absolutely right. I've always said, and Eric touched on this, don't hire someone just because they're Black. They have to be good. That's the gatekeeper right there. They have to be qualified. That is the gatekeeper. And when you look at African-American magicians who are performing at conventions and doing lectures, right now the current living Mount Rushmore is Ice, Puck, Chris Capehart, and Eric Jones. that is the current living Mount Rushmore of magicians. Now there's other magicians out there who are definitely qualified to lecture. Kevin Bethea, who's on here now, Rory Rennick, which is a different type of lecture. And then there's this upcoming group, the young ones that I talked about earlier. Noah Sony, if you've recently seen him on Penn and Teller's Foolish, I've had several conversations. Noah and I talk twice a week. And his thinking and some of the things he does, you're like, yo, this guy has some great stuff. He's one of the up and coming rising stars. Let's give this guy opportunity. Cameron Braxton, who's card slights and gambling, oh my gosh, it's almost impeccable it is impeccable what he does. So we got to look for these younger guys and even current guys and give them an opportunity. Maybe they don't need to start on the grand stage of a national convention, but some of these smaller local conventions, let's give them a shot there. But once again, it goes back to, let's find these guys, let's see what they're doing, and let's just give them the opportunity. But I will say this, and I'm not just saying this because of the platform we're on. The SAM has been doing a good job. In 2015, Mike Miller approached me along with Ice McDowell and said, look, we're going to do the Heart and Soul of Magic. And there's a magic show that featured all African-American magicians. And that right there was a great step in acknowledging African-American magicians. It wasn't just the show. There were lectures too, and lectures about, performing and doing tricks, and historical lectures. And so the SAM, I've been watching the SAM, and I am a member. They've been doing things to foster inclusion and diversity. So I applaud the SAM for what they've been doing, more so than any other magic organization that's been around. So you have to give credit where credit is due with that.
Yeah, they did it. They did the Soldiers of Sorcery a few years before that in Vegas.
Yes, they did.
All-Black show too. So they've always been on the cutting edge of diversity in magic.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention having the first African American president of
right. Mm-hmm.
that guy. So,
I don't know who the heck that is.
Yeah, who's that?
Who's that guy?
Okay, Matthew, let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
Another question coming in from the YouTubes. This one's from I lost it here for a second. It's from Ron, wanting to know, Puck is more Puck centric, talking about what the differences you see in your solo work and then your work with Scott, as far as acceptance and inclusion, like more audiences accepting you more as a solo act or working with Scott. And I know Scott's a hard person to work with. We've all seen the Christmas specials.
I mean, working by myself has always been, I've always been a general practitioner, manipulator, and it's been fun. But working with Scott has been so much, more fun for me as an artist, because we get to do things that are outside of magic a little bit. We get to show diversity and add in culture. Like, he's a hick from, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I'm, from New York. So we play on our different, on our different upbringings, and the audiences, I mean, it's been great. The way it's been received, it's like we can get away with things that we can never get away with by ourselves. And the audiences, like, we do a trick, about the N-word, and you would think that the audience would go crazy. I mean, we softened it up over the years, you know, but still the audience's reactions are phenomenal. We talk about racism, we talk about you know, all different types of subjects and things that are current, you know, and going on, you know, in pop culture, and it goes over great because now with a white guy and a black guy, the medicine is easier to take. You know, we add that sugar, so you know, it's been a lot easier than if I went up there by myself and tried to, you know, tackle those issues.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matthew. Next.
So Lou wanted to know what could let's reverse the situation where a white magician shows up and it's 100% black audience. Some tips on breaking the ice, working in that type of situation there.
Don't say the N word. Whatever you no, here, let's see. Here we go. You know, for the most part, I talk to some of my friends that have performed for black audiences, and they come back and tell me that, man, they were the greatest audience that I've ever performed for, because when it comes down to it, if you're a good performer, they're going to enjoy the magic, period. Now, if you're going to the Apollo Theater, then you might get fooled if you're not on top of it. But for the most part of it, magic is the great equalizer. A friend of mine, Jamal Keys, said that in my documentary, that magic equalizes, it equalizes everything. So if you, just like when I walk on stage and I expect people to see the black man for the first minute and then see the magic, I think it's the same way with black audience if you're good. But also know your audiences. Go back, I referred to Rory's brother. He's a comedian. You know, he can say things on stage knowing his audience, and then he goes into another comedy club and it just doesn't work. But you still have to know your audience and who you're performing for. That is my take on it. But I think if you're a good performer and you're coming out, you're gonna do well. I did the heart and soul of magic. Randy brought me in to do the heart and soul of magic, the show that he's the producer of, and we had Denny Haney. Oh, and he was the only white guy in the building, and he's the only white guy that got. I mean, he's the only guy that night that got a standing ovation
as an MC.
As an MC, yep. And he walked out and said, he said these words. I guess everybody realized who the Heart is. The name of the show is The Heart and Soul. And he said, I guess everybody know who the Heart is. And he killed as the MC. So I think it comes down to the presentation and making sure you're ready to perform great magic. Rory.
I was going to say, well, I came up from a project. We call it the Hood. One thing, if you perform for people in the hood with a little rougher edge, you always want to be confident. You want to have they sense if you're not confident. Even if beyond being good sometimes, a level of confidence will go a long ways in terms of securing them on your side.
Eric?
And just what the piggyback on everyone out they was saying, do your act. If you're the only white guy and it's an all black audience, do not change your music to rap music. Do not change your words to try to sound like something that you're not. Like, do what you do to make you who you are. If your act is an act with country music and you have a country twang when you talk, then do that, because that's who you are. I would not, if they hired me for a country show, for example, I've done, country clubs, I'm not going to change to country music. It's just not going to work for my act. So be genuinely who you are and you'll go over better.
Just do your magic.
Kevin.
Just to piggyback on a couple things. Eric, what you said is perfectly true. I mean, at the end of the day, when I first got started in magic, and I was maybe a little unconfident about the show and everything, there's one thing I always remember. They hired me, okay? I'm not walking there out of the blue. They hired me. There's a reason they hired me. There's a reason they hired that white guy at the all black audience. So like you said, just do you. And Ice, what you said is what I kind of alluded to earlier, except the roles are reversed. You know, your magic and your personality will come through. If they like you, they're going to like your magic. So the reversal is still the same. If there's a white performer performing for an all black audience, your personality, your confidence, and your magic is going to shine through. So that's all they have to do. There's no magic formula for performing for different ethnic groups. Just do you, but damn, you better do a good job, do a great job, do your show, and everything will be all right.
Matthew?
Someone wanted to know, with the lack of diversity in authors and publishers in Magic, is there anything about the way Magic is commonly taught or explained in books, videos, that you notice that there's a cultural bias in the teaching? And do you think that could lead to barriers to getting more young Black men and women into Magic?
I'll say historically, some of the tricks that were biased or even outright racist are somewhat canceled. Though if you're doing a trick that requires a thumb tip, and I know the theory behind it, you don't supposed to see it anyways, but if they do get a glimpse at it, if you've never had that happen, a Black guy wearing a thumb tip.
Public audience. We have a public audience. We have a public audience.
They don't know what a TT is.
Yeah.
Oh.
We have a public audience. Yes.
Yeah, but some of our utilizations maybe not so color friendly. Put it that way.
Dwight, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't really, other than tricks that, like Rory mentioned, the outright racist tricks, which mostly you don't see anymore. The instructions are never based on race or, China. It's more left hand or right hand than anything else. So, it's no bias in the instructions.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're passionate about the art, I mean, you overlook some of those things. You guys see behind me, I got hundreds of Magic books, and in some of those Magic books, there are some racial overtones in some of them. I won't name them by name, but they're in there. But I wanted to learn Magic, so I overlooked that kind of stuff. But today, with today's contemporary authors and lecturers and writers, I don't think any of that exists. At least I haven't seen anything like that.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I was thinking to follow up on that. Do you think that young African American need to find Magic books and videos from other Black magicians to feel inspired? Maybe see more of them in more photos of African American magicians in the publications to bring them along, because Eric Jones on America's Got Talent and Penn and Teller Fool Us seemed to inspire a group, a fresh new group of magicians, Black and white, from the younger generation. But do you think that having more African American representation in the instructional courses would help bring more in?
I believe that when I was first got my Magic kit, I wasn't really convinced that this was the direction I was going until I saw someone doing Magic that looked like me on television. My inspiration was Goldfinger. I saw them on TV, but most of the stuff that I saw in regards to the instructions were not people of color. It was like Kevin said earlier. I was desperate to learn the Magic at that point. I believe if people see people that look like them, they'd be more inspired. But I also believe that if their passion is that great, they're going to pursue the Magic no matter what.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Eric.
I would just like to say that as far as publications are concerned, I think that it's a little difficult to put race into it when you're learning magic books. A lot of times with illustrations, there is no race. It's just a hand showing you a sleight. So at least when I was learning magic and reading the books, I never put race to it. It wasn't until you start seeing the shows. So when I was young, it was The World's Greatest Magic and Masters of Illusions that would come on. Looking at those, and Ice was on one of those. That was the first time that I ever seen a Black magician was Ice in his Dove work. So that kind of reinforces that there is a path that you can do it. But I think as far as publications and in the community, because as a community is concerned, I personally don't see it a lot like that.
I think that plays a role in inspiring African American magicians. As you said, or as the person said, Eric Jones being on AGT, but prior to that, the material that he released prior to getting national fame has sparked a lot of African American, African American in general, whether young or old. Like, wow, someone that looks like me who's doing coin stuff, and most magicians shy away from coin stuff. So that inspired them to get into coin magic. For me, Michael Vinton out of England, oh my gosh, I'm like, oh, this guy, he's a card mechanic. Oh man, and it was just nice to see someone that looked like me and inspired me to learn certain moves like that. It's one of those things, like I said before, and I believe Maya Angelou coined it, is what I said. You can't be it if you don't see it. You need to have a model, some type of model to inspire you in some way, shape, or form. So that is definitely important. And I'm going to go back to Kevin Bethea and the two projects he put out on Penguin. And I've heard some African American magicians like get excited about that. And oh, do you know Kevin? You know Kevin? So that type of thing is important. But what Eric said about the beyond publications, just think about all the Magic TV specials. I'm not talking about Penn and Teller's Folders because they've been doing a very good job. But think about the Magic tours that's been going on around the country and the world. I've yet to see African American magician. I've seen women on these tours, but I've yet to see an African American magician. And I know that there's some African American magicians who are really qualified to be on some of these tours, really qualified. You have Magical Bones out in the UK, he's big in the UK. And that's just one example, but there's some other examples that I can name. Mondre's Bird Act, that's awesome if anyone's seen that act. And some of the guys here, Ice, Puck, Kevin. Yes?
I was just adding to your list.
You too.
No, but to get on that. And this is one thing I want to say about this whole thing, and I'm gonna shut up, is that I don't want anyone here who is listening and viewing this to think that this is a pity party, woe is us, and we're pleading for opportunity or anything like that. This forum was set up just to share our experiences and our perspectives, and you can see that it's diverse. Because as far as I know, in all these performers on here, we've been doing pretty well in our careers, So we're just expressing and just letting you inside our world and what goes on and some of the challenges that we deal with. And one other thing, we always have to also give recognition to those who are before us, the Jack Goldfingers, the Hiawathas, the Frank Brents, the Fittek Saunders,
Donald Camp.
Don Camp, yes, Don Camp. Presto, that's what I was looking for. These gentlemen been through, they showed their work. They showed up and showed out and did their thing. And these are some of the voices that we need to keep in the forefront of the mind of the magic community, because magic, Black African American magicians' history is part of the greater magic history.
Right.
So we need to recognize that and acknowledge that. And fortunate enough, and I think I may be segueing into something. This year, we're going to have a lot of books coming out about African American magicians.
We will talk about that soon.
Okay, well, I'll stop there.
So I'm gonna pass it. Is everybody good, Roy? We can pass it back to Matthew. Okay, Matthew.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions coming in about the history of Black magicians in America. If you guys want to start to segue to that, we can certainly do that. And also, Randy, when you were talking about Don Camp, some of the questions that I'm feeding you guys are coming from Don. He's here.
He's here?
Yes.
He's in the house still.
The Yoda, Don Camp.
I will start the conversation off with the history part. This is kind of like what I like doing. Earlier, I held up a picture. You see, this picture here is a picture of some of our shoulders that we stood on. One of my favorite ones is this one here. I had a conversation with his daughter just the other day, and his ex-wife the other day. She is 95 years old.
Wow.
We appreciate that we were looking after Fee Sanders' honor. I'm the actual director and producer of Quiet Masters. I'm sure everybody has had an opportunity to see it. It is on Prime. Actually, go on Prime and type up Quiet Masters: The History and Relevance of the Black Magical Artist. Do it because you have an opportunity to learn a lot. If you like it, go ahead and rate it. But if you don't like it, don't give me that stuff. The reason I did this, and it's funny because these individuals that's on here were a big part of it. When you see it, you'll see them in it. We had an opportunity so many times to have our story put out there. And what has been happening is it's been watered down a lot of times. I'm reading books and things, and sometimes embellishment happens. So our story sometimes is not getting fully told. I'm not saying it's not being told, but not fully told. So I wanted to do the documentary and let people kind of see that we've been around a long time. The history part of it is only half of it. And Rory's going to tell you more about it. You know, we have a book coming out about the Boomskis. Everybody knows the Boomskis were the comedy relief for the Hermans. Many people saw the poster of Herman, and then the black guy, that was actually Isaac Willis. He was the Boomski. No matter what his name was, no matter what their names are, when they're in that position, they are the Boomskis. So there's a book coming out on the Boomskis. I wanted to tell the story on how hard it was for some of the artists to be successful, and that how we are standing on their shoulders because of the tragedies and the things they had to overcome to get to where they were, so we can get to where we are. One of the things that I did a couple of talks earlier, and I was telling someone, this gentleman asked me, you know, why do we tell people that it was so hard to perform back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s? And I showed him this book. I have it right here. This book here. This is what they call the Green Book. This is the Green Book. It is, this is the Green Book. This book is the book that would tell Black entertainers and Black families what cities and towns that they can go into, what hotels will accept Black people, which towns were the sundown towns. Sundown towns are towns that African-American Black people could not be in when the sun goes down. They even had signs that says, don't let your Black butt be in town when the sun goes down. So imagine this. You're a performer and you're traveling from city to city, and the people like you. They love you in the theater. Now, first of all, they like you in the theater, but you couldn't even dress in the theater. You have to come and you have to dress in the back. And then you come on stage and perform, and everybody loves you. But before the sun goes down, you had to be out of that town. Imagine if you were that person and they still was successful. We had a magician that was, his name was Black Herman back in the day. Black Herman was the bully, I believe. I call him, I love him. He's the boss of back then, because he said that he marketed himself as the African Zulu magician, you know, and he embraced it, and people came out to see him. And doing some of my research, I realized that people came to see him because some people had been told that Black people had tails. And so people were actually buying tickets to see if this African Zulu had tails. So, but he took their money. That's how boss he was. He still took their money. He didn't care what they came to see. He did wonderful magic, but he was a marketing genius. So we have a rich history of African American history. It goes down to straight back to Richard Potter, who in fact requested that he would be buried standing up. Many people don't know that fact. We don't know if he was, but he was requested. He wanted to stand up. So we have so many stories to tell. I'm going to relinquish my time, stop my time, and I'm going to shift down and give this to Rory Rennick.
Oh, thank you. And like I was saying to all the magicians, one of the reasons why the history of Black magicians is so important is that if they were able to be successful with all the barriers that none of us currently have or you would ever have, and became successful, imagine how successful they would have been if they had access to all the audiences. Some couldn't perform for white audiences. Some of them, like I said, couldn't perform after sundown in certain places. Some of them didn't have the insurance and the backing of other financial giants to push their shows forward. And imagine if they didn't have to play the boomski. What if they didn't have to play the buffoon on stage? Because many of the boomskis were just as skilled as the magicians they were hired to assist. You know, Keller, Thurston, and all those guys. Well, the boomskis had to know if something went awry in the show, they had to be able to fill in, and you know, to keep the crowds going, and they had to know pretty intimately what those effects were. So when you talk about historically, this is why it's important to know the history of Black magicians, because their success leaves none of us with any excuse, whether you're Black or white. Right? So that's one of the things I wanted to add.
Anybody else? Okay. Matthew.
I know there's a Richard Potter book, but a couple of people wanted to know, what is the best way to learn about Richard Potter? And also, for those who don't know who Richard Potter is, could you give them a quick explanation on why Richard Potter is like the emphasis of a lot of the history on Black magicians?
I'm picking up that same book that Rory had.
Mm-hmm.
You want to learn about Richard Potter? That's the book. Richard Potter was the first professional magician in America. Proudly said he was African American. He was a mulatto child. He was born. A year after slavery was outlawed in Massachusetts, so he had an easier time traveling and doing magic. But he was like our he's like our godfather of magic. He's the one that we look at with much pride as far as knowing that we can make it. He had a lot of problems when he went down south, but he was able to achieve a lot in that era than pretty much anyone else. He also, his son also, they called him Little Richard. Little Richard Potter, when he died, when Richard Potter died, Little Richard Potter took his act over. And in the SAM, I think it's in 1920-ish, 20 or 30, they have an article about Little Richard Potter talking about his legacy with his dad.
As I said, Richard Potter was the first American-born magician, and so that's something that I like to emphasize, and he was a man of African descent. So that's part of magic history. If you want to learn more about Richard Potter, in addition to the book, go to YouTube and type in Richard Potter. There is a video of Robert Olson, who's a magician, who does a reenactment of Richard Potter. And it is actually really entertaining and good. It really is. And I think it's around 20, 30 minutes. Google that or go on YouTube, type in Richard Potter, Robert Olson, and you're going to see a performance, which is great. And also the author of the book talks about Richard Potter. So I would say start there if you want to learn more about him. And then there's some other books that are out there about African American magicians, and I'm pleased to say that we have 2 books, and they're going to hopefully they'll talk about it by magicians and their lives, because 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now, we have documentation of Puck and Ice McDonald and what they've been doing in their lives, because they wrote books about their lives. And this is part of magic history. So it won't be lost, or it won't be hard to find, like we're trying to find as much information about African-American magicians from the past.
We will talk about those later on, yes. You folks on YouTube, don't go looking for Richard Potter at this moment. Stay on with us. Then go look at it. Okay, Matthew.
You guys have talked a couple times now about the Heart and Soul show. Could you go more in depth on a couple of people are asking about, if you could go more in depth on the Heart and Soul show?
Well, I'm going to pass that over to the actual producer of the Heart and Soul, Randy.
The origin of the Heart and Soul of Magic started when I in my early years of magic, attended magic conventions, and when I attend magic conventions, I will only see like a handful of African American magicians, and I said there must be more out there, and so I had this idea of creating the show showcasing African American magicians, and I reached out to, it was Chris Capehart was the first person, put me in line with Puck. And don't take this the wrong way, Puck, but at the time, Puck was a superstar to me. And I say, don't take this the wrong way, because it's not saying that you're not a superstar now, okay? But I was like, oh, can I talk to Puck? Is he gonna pick up my phone call? And I spoke to Puck. Puck said, I'm in, I'm definitely in. And then Puck said, you need to talk to Ice. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know this guy. He's on the West Coast. Is he gonna do this? I called Ice expecting him to say no. And he was like, sure, Randy, yes. Like that. And so that started the first Heart and Soul of Magic. But I always have to go back to someone else. Don Camp, sitting in his room, in his home, and talking to Don. And Don is one of these guys who's a mentor, and he has this wisdom about him. And he was like, Randy, I really think you should do this. I really think you should do this. And we talked about it, and Don just like encouraged me and just fed into me to do this. And I pursued it. And so the Heart and Soul of Magic has been going on off and on for the past, maybe, I think we did 15 versions of them. We did some virtual versions of Heart and Soul during this pandemic, and I'm proud to say that if everything goes well, we have another one coming up live in the theater. So it's continuing to grow. It's a labor of love, and it's a passion. My dream is for it to be bigger. And we had Kevin Bethea on a Heart and Soul too. I'm sorry, we had Kevin Bethea on a Heart and Soul. And he killed that show, definitely.
That's where we met.
Yeah, Kevin was the headliner of the Heart and Soul we did, one of the Heart and Souls we did here in Philadelphia. And so I tend to get magicians, obviously good magicians, from all around the country who are doing some things. And we're moving on to getting some younger magicians involved in this. As I mentioned, some of them, Noah Sony, RJ Lynch, Cameron Braxton, and doing another version called the Heart and Soul Next Generation to encourage these young guys to continue their magic career. So that's what it's about. We have Jamal Keys on there. Hiawatha has been on there. Quick interesting fact, one of the very first yes, it was the first Heart and Soul of Magic was the very last time Frank Brentz did his full duck act. And we have it on tape. It was the very last time Frank Brentz. If you don't know who Frank Brentz is, please do some research. It's a lot of information about Frank Brentz, but that was the very last time he did his duck act. And I asked him, I said, Frank, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it, because if you know how the trick works, and Frank was in his mid to late 70s at that time. I'm like, this could be, a toll on your body. He was like, Randy, I need to do this act. Brought down the house.
Kevin?
I want to share something with you, Randy, that I've never shared before. The last Heart and Soul you did in Philly, the Heart and Soul was the first magic show I ever took my daughter to see. She had never gone to another magic. That was the very first one. She was young then, and she came away from that show talking about inspired. One of the main reasons, of course, is she never knew that besides her daddy, that there were African-American magicians out there, number one. But the overall atmosphere on how everybody responded to the show, the diversity of the crowd, the excitement that she got to meet you and Jamal Keys, and Eric Anderson was in that show, actually.
Yes, he was.
She came away and talked my ear off all the way home. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm a magician, and she sees me all the time, but she was so excited. So any of you out there, if you ever get a chance to see the Heart and Soul, whenever it's in your town or whatever, take advantage of it. It's really an incredible show.
Right, and to close it out, I have to loop back to someone else, Ice and Mike Miller. Mike Miller, he wasn't the president, maybe he was the president of SAM at the time. When the Heart and Soul, when Mike asked me to do the Heart and Soul in Philadelphia, I was nervous. I was like, we're going to do this in front of magicians. Will this work? And Ice was like, yeah, it's going to work. Don't worry about it. Mike Miller was like, yes, it'll work. And it got a lot of press, which was good, outside the magic community. The show was great. And I'm not just saying that, but it was the support of the SAM who had confidence in doing this at that time. Right. And I was like, I just can't thank SAM enough for that. Just putting the confidence to just say, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do the show of all African-American magicians. And, we'll just see what happens. But we know that this can work for our convention.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a sellout, actually. They sold it out at the time. So, yeah. Matthew?
So on top of, a couple of people asked about Ellen Armstrong as well. She was a double whammy, African-American and obviously a woman. Do you guys have any stories about her, or ways people can find out about her?
Ellen Armstrong, I showed you the picture earlier. This is Ellen right here. These are the Armstrongs. They were a family of magicians, like the first family of Black magicians. You had John Armstrong. You had Bella, Lily Bella, and she was the stepmother, father, and this is Ellen. They traveled doing magic shows, churches, and schools all around the country. Very successful. And when John died, Bella, the mother, and Ellen went around doing the act. But then when Ellen started doing the act by herself, she was worried that her being a female was not going to be as successful as her dad. So she was very apprehensive until she hit the stage, and then she did the magic that she thought she can do, and totally became successful. Totally became successful. So she kind of kept the legacy of the Armstrong family alive until she retired. Matthew?
Yeah, and Cody has a question. Cody Clark, what tips would you do you have for white performers who want to write into their scripts highlighting African American history for their school shows, but want to do it in a respectful and accurate manner? For example, Cody says his children's show is themed around trains and his conductor Cody character. He's had thought about making a routine celebrating the history of the poor Pullman porters and other things like that. So any tips for someone like that?
Puck?
Yeah, I actually did an assembly program for some years. It was called Magical Moments of Lives in Great African Americans. And I basically taught about Black history with magic, and it was great. The only problem was that it only sold during February, during Black History Month. Unfortunately, they think that's the only time that they should learn about Black history. But if he wants to learn anything, put some stuff in his show that showcase Black history, tell him to give him my email, puckmagic at 2001@yahoo.com, and I can give him a bunch of the routines that I did, because I talked about inventors, civil rights leaders, sports figures. I mean, I hit every gamut. I even talked about Richard Potter. So I've got magic routines that correlate with those perfectly. So if he needs any help, just shoot me an email.
Rory?
In terms of conductors, I also write articles about African American and African diaspora / Black image playing cards. In one of my articles, I wrote about a particular playing card. It was the Cotton Belt route. It was for a train station, but on the Ace of Spades, there was it talked about an advertisement for the Pullman cars, and so when I wrote the article, I talk about that. It's called Card Culture. It's part of the 52 Plus Joker organization in their publication, and I talk about the Pullman, the Pullman porters, but also too I talk about Henry Box Brown, who rode a train, as well as was delivered from Richmond, Virginia to Philadelphia for his freedom. So that's another route he could probably go as well.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Matthew, next question, please.
Yeah, we just have a couple more. Someone wanted to know, when performing outside of obvious apparatus that we won't get into, is there obstacles that you find as a magician of color that white magicians might not run into when it comes to performing, or that we might not just be aware of?
Certain spirit slate routines might present a challenge. I had to overcome that. If they wanted to know more about that, they can contact me.
Anyone else? I think I have not had a problem. I just do it.
Can you repeat the question again?
Outside of certain apparatus that we won't get into because the open side, have you noticed any obstacles as a magician of color that other magicians might not run into when it comes to performing, and how do you address those?
Are you saying in terms of performing, like I may need some clarity on this, but in terms of performing for individuals, groups, or anything, or like some of the apparatus and things that we use, in terms of performing for individuals and groups and things like this, we touched about it earlier, and when we show up to do, maybe not so much now, but it is, it's still around now, to do an event, to perform. The client knows who they hired, but the people don't know who they hired. And so it's this thing that we have to break that boundary first. And as I said, let our personality, let them like us, our magic speak for us. Because it's something that we in our community we call the black tax. And the black tax is there's some hurdles that we have to go through that our white counterparts do not have to go through. I'll give you another example. An agent told me that they could never hire me just because of the style of my hair, and their clientele would not hire me for that. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But as soon as he said that, another magician right there, white magician, cursed him out for saying how stupid that was. You know, like that. He said, this guy is qualified to perform for any audience. And so it was nice to have an ally that just to speak on my behalf, who said it's not, the guy's dressed appropriately. He does dress appropriately. So it's just an issue of his hair. But hey, you know, those types of things that we have to overcome at times. And other times is this, you know, it's easy. You know what? Hey, guess what? Let's get the black magician because he's cheaper. But when we're like, no, we're not cheaper. This is our rate. But I know from experience, a white counterpart, same gig, he charged more. And when the client reached out to me, it's this thing I do with a white magician here. A client reaches out to him, and if he's not available for the show, he calls me up. He says, look, I'm gonna give you the show. This is how much I charge. I charge the same amount. The client says, well, the other client said cheaper. Now, there may be a gain, but this is all after I send out my information, my image, my EPK. And I'm like, what's going on with this? And this constant pattern that I see. Well, you see it quite often, not all the time, but you see it quite often. So it's this thing that we have to, you know, deal with outside of just performing, but just on the business side of it.
Here's something that's interesting. Kevin and I did a talk almost like this before, and he had a very good point. I'd like for him to talk about that. You know, when you're talking about the clients and the representation, you talk a little bit about that, please. You know,
and which aspect about the trade show?
CEOs may not really want you representing.
Yeah. So, well, one of my big venues are performing for trade shows for major corporations around the world. And the challenge that you have sometimes, which is a reality, is, you know, sometimes I wonder, you know, whether or not I didn't get the show or get the gig because I'm black. Because you have to remember, these are major corporations. Do they want my image, a blackface, representing their company? Because that's what you're pretty much doing. You're a representative of that company when you go out to perform at a trade show. So those are some of the things that, you know, I've encountered. You know, when I go out and I'm at a trade show, I may be the only black presenter there that's up with a company. You know, so that's something interesting. Again, I have no proof of that, but it always makes me think, because before I got into magic full time, I was in sales and corporate marketing as well. And image is everything. And, you know, you wonder, do they want this face to represent their company when you're talking about their products and services and things like that? But I pretty much do the same ideology that I shared with you guys earlier. You know, let your show do the talking. You know, when they find out that you're articulate and you could talk about technical things and mix it in with the magic, then all that goes away. But that's something that I've always thought about.
It's funny because we've all heard the saying when people say, man, you speak so well.
Yeah.
You get that all the time. It's like, well, how am I supposed to speak? You know?
Right.
So, all right. Anyone else want to jump in before I give it back to Matthew? Matthew? Yes.
So we got one last question. Have you guys ever designed a show or effects around current social issues to highlight messages? Is that something that you do, or do you try to leave things like that out of your show and just do magic shows?
Puck,
I,
on my
I mean, I
other-
started out.
I don't bring the political stuff into my act.
Right.
You know, I'm there. It's there for fun. I'm not there to antagonize anybody or myself. So that doesn't come into my shows. I mean, you know, you might say something as a response to something that somebody says, but it's not a built-in part of the show.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started out doing magic, I mean, I did very general magic and it was fun. But the excitement to me is as I got older and the more years I put in performing, I started making the show more personal and started talking more about my life, about my kids, about my upbringing and things like that. And a lot of it now is about talking about social issues and things. But if you can tie it in a way that's entertaining and it's not too hard hitting. Like right now, I'm putting together a keynote speech for at-risk youth, for high school kids, basically telling them my life story, which was pretty rough, and getting them to go in the right direction, not follow the path that I went in. But I'm using a couple magic effects in there to kind of push my, you know, my story to keep them entertained and also still, you know, highlight some of the stories in my presentation. But I find that the more I perform, the more I enjoy adding more of myself, personal, you know, into the magic. And I find that they respond better to it now because now they feel like they know me better than just the guy who's up there doing magic tricks. Now they say they know Puck, they know the person, and that is much more intimate and much more memorable to me as a performer. And that's why that's the direction I'm going in now.
I don't mind adding in some of those controversial or current types of issues, especially like what Puck says. After they know me on stage, I can introduce, you know, a hit here or there, but it's usually just provocative when I do my stand-up comedy routine. So it's a lot of it could be tongue-in-cheek, some of it could be just sarcasm, or if someone was antagonizing me from the audience, you know, I might go there. But like Mr. Redmond said, it's not built in.
For me, much like Puck and Rory, I just do my act. There's elements. It's elements of like Puck, my culture, my upbringing that is in my act, but it's not antagonizing or provoking. It's just more like thought provoking. I talk about the time when I lived in South Africa in my act, and so it's just giving you a little peek inside, not just about me, about the life of living in Cape Town, South Africa. However, there are some clients just within the last year that has requested me to do a show. And so what I created was a show called Africadabra. And it incorporates the history of African-American magicians. And this is more for the youth, but then there's another component which is more like a talk and about social issues. Ironically, how did I come up with that concept of Africadabra? Last year during the pandemic, I found something and I took a picture of it and posted it on Facebook and Instagram. It was this Rubik's Cube with African mask on it. And I just out of being funny, I put Africadabra on there. I lie to you not, hand on heart. Half hour after making that post, I got texts and phone calls from people saying, Randy, you need to run with that. That is something that you could do. That is something that is much needed. And people would like to hear about that. And this came from magicians and non-magicians. And people were like, yo, do you have an Africadabra show? And so I was like, heck yeah. 3 months I will have it. I will be launching it. So I just started working on this show. Well, not just start, but I worked on that show for 3 months, and I had clients actually hire me for that show to do it virtually. And I do have a live version now once we go back to that. But yes, so basically it was a business. Well, it's something I'm passionate about, but it's also where my passion and business aligned, and it created a new market for me. So yeah.
Kevin, yes.
I don't have anything. I definitely stay away from certain things in my show. Again, I'm there to entertain and let everybody have a good time. The examples that Puck and Randy gave, they're great. I mean, if you have a certain audience let's say of African American kids or things like that, and you want to talk about some things that are relatable to them, that they can relate to, and give them some good advice and inspiration, I think that's great. But as I pretty much stay away from controversial topics such as politics and things like that. I mean, even at a comedy show, you could probably get away with some of that because, like Rory said, a lot of that can be done tongue in cheek. But for me, just for me, because after all, we're not all a monolith here. I tend to stay away from that type of discussions and things in my show.
I am a magical entertainer, and I am a corporate speaker. I speak and that's what I do. I'm not in government. I'm not part of that. My goal is to entertain people. Now, there's been times that social issues have come up in the corporate world, asking questions, or even when I'm doing shows or workshops, I then address it at that point. But most people, they come to get away from all that. Yeah. And if you can get people away from that for like an hour or so, you've done your job. So it's not always good to have them come into your show and they're faced with the same things that they're faced with outside of the theater. So if you're a performer, perform. If you're a speaker, speak. Let the people who handles all of that stuff handle all of that stuff. And if you have an opinion, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I do have opinion about it, but when people want to see me perform, they want to be entertained, and that's my job foremost. So yes.
Well, let's start to wrap it up for the evening. It's been a great time with everyone. So we're going to start with Ice. I'll let you.
Question before we wrap it. How many people are we addressing right now?
It has fluctuated. We're hovering around 80-ish right now, but people have left early, which happens from time to time. But we've peaked out somewhere around 120 over the course of the night. Okay. So, awesome. We're winding down.
Okay, great.
I know you guys. I know before we started, we had a set order as we get towards the end here, and this is the part where we like to say, how can people find you? Do you have anything that you're selling? So this is the time to talk about what you have and where they can find you. And Ice, I'll let you go through the order that you guys had set beforehand.
Well, Rory was going to present.
Oh, okay. I'm Rory Rennick. You can find me on Facebook as well as The Comedy Magic of Rory Rennick. And also, I'm writing a book about Henry Box Brown, the escaped slave from Richmond, Virginia, who mailed himself to freedom to Philadelphia. He eventually went to England. And so I decided to write a book, an in-depth book about his life story and my obsession with him. I was actually able to find a couple of his descendants as well in the book. If you can spotlight me now.
I made you co-host, Rory.
Oh, great.
Yes.
So what I'll do.
You can share your screen. Yep.
Okay. Can you see it now?
No.
Okay, just a second here. Well, I'll tell you what. If we go to, if you can add that link into the chat, it'll give you a description of the book, and you can pre-order it by PayPaling me. The cost of the book is $60, and with your friends and family, my friends and family, you can do that as well. It's a gorgeous looking book as well as totally informative and well researched.
Can you give that link out loud real quick, please? I mean, can you give where they can find it real quick?
Oh, he placed it inside of the chat. Brett put it inside there. So if you go there to the author's homepage, you'll be able to see the description. You'll get an excerpt from the book. You won't be able to purchase it from there just yet, but And give me a couple of weeks and you will be able to.
And I also
And-
posted into the YouTube as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And just put in there your address and put in here Black Magician's Diary or BMD or something like that.
Malcolm.
Oh yeah, sorry. I have my books available. Finding Magic: Memoirs of a Magician. It's my autobiography. Talks about my upbringing and everything I went through and to becoming a professional magician. These are available on Amazon.com. If you want an autographed copy, you can get it on my website, puckmagic.com. And I also have a bunch of other products on there with my solo products as well as products I do with Scott Alexander from Our Puck Magic, and those are also available at the same website, puckmagic.com.
Kevin.
Yeah, yeah, I have a couple of products on Penguin you guys might be interested in. I have my Penguin Live lecture that I've done on there that you can get through there. I have a lot of great sleight of hand effects with coins and cards and cups and balls and all kinds of things. So what I really like about my lecture is not just cards, not just coin, it's a really good potpourri of a lot of different things. So that's something to check out. Also something I'm very proud about, if any of you ever wanted to take a borrowed dollar bill and change it to a $100 bill without any trickery or anything like that, I have a bill change on there. It's called My Friend George, which has been doing really well. I'm very proud about that. You go to penguinmagic.com if you're not familiar with their site, and you'll be able to get that information from there. And I also can be found on Facebook as well as my website, which is ktbmagic.com, for any other questions and or just in general, just to find out about me. And thanks again, guys, for joining us. What a great time.
Okay. I am Ice McDonald. Pretty much you guys kind of know that. My website is icestormentertainmentgroup.com. Ice storm, like ice storming weather. icestormentertainmentgroup.com. I have, this is my first book. It's called Born for This, Destiny Authenticated. It is $25. I am working on a second book called 44 Years of Walking Backwards. You will be able to get that in a few months, but this one is on the website and is also at Amazon.com. I also want to encourage you, please go view the Quiet Masters, The History and Relevance of the Black Magical Artists. It is on Prime. Go see that. The actual money, the residuals that comes from that actually goes to charity. My wife and I just said we're going to forego anything that's made from it, and we give it to children's hospitals. So I would appreciate it if you go and view that. And just there's so much that's coming out. We have the Margaret Stills book on the Boonskis. Henry Box Brown from Rory. I'm gonna tell you one thing. I read some of it and it is incredible. Just the 2 chapters that I was able to just glance over is crazy. You would think you were actually there. So if you don't buy anything from me, make sure you buy that man's book. And Puck, when you read Puck's book, make sure you have some napkins and some Kleenex by you.
Yes.
Your book is incredible, man.
It's incredible.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
You got to get part 2.
Yeah, it's like,
Oh yeah.
let me tell you about the Redmonds. The Redmonds, I remember the young man at a contest one time. He was killing, and I was like, who is this guy? He used to have colored contacts on his eyes way back in the day when he performed. And his father and I, you know, it's a shame I don't live in Washington, because the time that I went down there, I enjoyed myself so much with him. I'm sure we'll be hanging out. We get a chance to hang out at this convention called the IABMA. Now, let me explain the IMBA real briefly. The IMBA stands for the International Association of Black Magical Artists. 30% of our organization is people not of color. Richard Kaufman, we have
Francis Minotti.
Paul Draper. It is a place that, it is a organization where people can come and just have fun and learn. I want to do a quick shout out that we're having a summit. The IABMA summit is going to be May 19th through 22nd, 2022. It's going to be in Atlanta. Some of the artists on, not all of them, is Michael Vincent. We have Richard Kaufman. We have Paul Draper. We have Randy Shine. We have Kevin Bethea.
Rice.
We have
Reggie
Reggie
Rice.
Rice from Washington is headlining it. And so that's just a few. We have workshops, and it's a summit. It's one of the most diverse summits there. So go to iabma.com. Here it is, iabma.com, and register and get all the information. Trust me, it's gonna blow you away. Last year, Francis Minotti did a lecture, and that killed. He was like, oh my gosh, he joined just like that once he saw the camaraderie between magicians. And notice I said magicians, not black magicians. I said magicians. So come on out and check it out, okay? And you'll have a lot of fun.
A couple of things real quick before some people are talking in the chat that Quiet Masters on Amazon Prime is coming up, currently not available to watch in your location.
Wow.
And it seems like this, it's like people in Pittsburgh, but they don't count because it's Pittsburgh. I can say that because I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan.
You know what? It's crazy.
Eagles.
That's funny. That's not good, because what ends up happening is sometimes they put you on hold, but I'm going to go and address it, and then I will find out.
What about for people outside of the United States? Is it on Amazon Prime in all regions, or is it in other streaming services outside the U.S.?
In the UK, it is definitely on in the UK.
It seems to be an East Coast bias here. Some people are saying it's not available in New York. Some are saying it's not available in Pennsylvania.
Well, you know, I'm pulling it up right now, and if it's not available, I address. See, the problem that I've been having is since Amazon is becoming a powerhouse and they're producing a lot of their own stuff, sometimes they push things off. So while we're talking, let me check it out here.
And while you're doing that, someone asked about the Bonsky book. If anyone has any information about that, the cover for Ice, while he's fiddling around with Amazon.
The Boomskis from Margaret Steele. She's in a few months. It should be out.
Okay.
And Ice, did you want to share the publication you're working on too?
I would do that in another time.
Okay.
Someone said they were able to watch in Philly. It says the trailer is on there.
Okay, yeah, it says it right here. I have to check it out. Yeah, it's right now. I have to contact them and find out why that says that.
Okay.
That would be a tragedy if that is the case.
So for those,
what I will do is I'm going to everyone who's listening, I'm going to actually be moving and adding Quiet Masters to another venue, Vimeo, as well as maybe Hulu, and then everybody will be getting it. So I'm not sure why that's saying it. I'm looking at it right now, and it does say that it's currently not available. I don't know if it's a system thing down, but I would check it out and see where it is. But I will let you guys know.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you guys for being here.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I don't have any product or anything to sell, but if you want to bring me in to talk my talk, as we say in Philadelphia, I'm more than welcome to do that. I've noticed there was a lot of questions. You can hit me up at info@randyshine.com if you want to talk offline, or Instagram ran_magic. If you want to talk offline about anything that was discussed here to get, go deeper into the woods in terms of what we're discussing here tonight. I'd like to thank everyone, my fellow magicians on this panel. You know I love y'all guys, and SAM for sponsoring this. I also want to give a shout out to an elder statesman of African American magicians, and that is Teddy Lee. I see him on air. Thank you, Teddy Lee, for being here, one of the elder statesmen of African American magicians. We love you, Teddy. And that's it, everyone. Just reach out to me if you want to talk.
So, and would I be mistaken to say that people are gonna be hanging out afterwards?
Yeah, we're gonna be hanging out afterwards. We're just going to wrap up the recording here. But again, I like to thank everyone here. When I initially talked to ICE, I didn't want to do this in February because, like Puck said, for some reason people seem to think that you can only do things like this in February, and I didn't want to do that. It's like when we did the women's panel, I didn't want to do it in March. So again, thanks everyone for coming out, and I know our president of the SAM, Dr. Joel, has something he would like to say as we wrap this up for the night.
Yeah, again, I just want to say thank you to all you all coming. It was a fantastic discussion. I think the brilliant philosopher Mike Miller summed it up best in the chat, where he said most of the panel are not black or white magicians, they're family.
Got that right,
And
Mike.
I think that's what it's all about. It's about being a family here.
Love you too, Mike.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like
Mike's
Kenny.
Right.
So thank you. And I also want to say thank you to our president, Matthew Crabtree, who did an outstanding job tonight. That was great. And our engineer of wonder, Brett Soul, and our dean, John Midgley. So thank you all.
Billy Barron. Billy, how are you, sir? Good.
And if you give me a minute, I'm going to be opening up the chat for everybody so you can talk amongst yourselves. So give me a second.
Thank you for YouTube, folks. This is where we say goodbye